All right, everyone, a good afternoon to you. I'm forecaster Nick Dunn with forecaster John Tinney. We are going to do a quick weather update for you regarding tomorrow's potentially significant severe weather event. We'll give everybody just a few minutes from our mobile app and those of you that are on Facebook to join in. We are also cross-posted live on our YouTube platform as well. So let's go ahead and we'll give everybody in just a couple of moments here to join us. And John, we are again at it. We had a rough one on Friday, and looks like we're gonna get a round two tomorrow.
Oh yeah, tis the season to be spring, and it's been a very active spring. Across much of the Midwest, they're going to deal with some significant severe weather out back across Iowa, Illinois, parts of Missouri this afternoon and evening. Barring that the cap breaks out there, their severe weather threats a little more uncertain, believe it or not, than what we will likely deal with tomorrow.
Yeah, as we're starting to get a lot of you guys starting to tune in. It looks like the notification was just sent out. But real quick, while we're getting some folks on, just want to show the radar real quick this afternoon. It's relatively quiet. I'm going to use the word relative because we do have a cluster of storms in southern Ohio here. Nothing significant that will continue to kind of slide off towards the southeast and kind of gradually weaken. We are also watching a complex of thunderstorms back around Chicagoland. Now, most of this should pass north of the Bell Park area, but those of you up around South Bend might get clipped by that, depending on how that course goes. So we'll continue to kind of see how that progresses, but I'm going to double check and just make sure that you guys can all hear us. You can see me okay. I've got John in via audio here, so again, potentially tomorrow, another potential significant severe weather event. We've got to get you guys ready. So without further ado, I'm going to turn off the radar here for us. I'm going to turn off the lightning and our warnings as well, just so we can try to keep a clean looking slate. So the latest Storm Prediction Center outlook is out, and I'm going to kind of center the screen here for us. And real quick, just for reference, our coverage area, I've got John's coverage area on here too, so you're going to see some more Indiana counties on here than what you're used to. But John, speaking of Indiana, not much change from the latest Storm Prediction Center outlook that was just issued at about 1:30, but I'll let you kind of talk about Indiana real quick here.
Yeah, one of the biggest things to note is we typically, when we talk about severe weather, we're talking about damaging winds. We're usually talking about a lot of storms, but tomorrow's different. We're talking about the potential for an outbreak of tornadoes, some of which could be strong and intense, EF2 or stronger. And that's kind of a rare thing that we deal with. There's also the potential for very large hail and damaging winds up to 70 miles per hour. So all modes of severe weather on the table, but we're actually more concerned this round about that tornado potential than we typically are this time of year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just to look at the overall probabilistic tornado outlook, and hopefully the sound is a little bit better now. I saw a couple of folks saying it was actually probably my end, not John's. But real quick, here's a look at the overall probabilistic tornado outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. Again, we have this yellow. Okay, this is a very widespread 10% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles. Now, you may look at that and say, that's not that high. I've got nothing to worry about. Need to kind of pump the brakes on that just a little bit for a couple of reasons. Number one, that is, again, climatologically speaking, that is way above average for what we are used to. Obviously, we're starting to kind of get into that tornado season, but seeing this wide of a swath of a 10% area is relatively not something that we see very often, right? And even this 5% area, also very broad up and down the I-71 corridor through much of Ohio, into northwestern PA and through the mid-Ohio Valley. And John, I think the other thing too that's interesting, I'm going to turn on you mentioned the potential for significant tornadoes. It essentially covers most of the lower peninsula of Michigan through northern Indiana and northwestern Ohio as well.
Yeah, it is not something that we typically deal with, especially that far up into Michigan. I mean that risk goes pretty much all the way up towards the Traverse City area. So, this is something you're going to have to pay attention to. But I want to stress, tomorrow is going to be one of those days where it's going to be hard to time out these storms. We're talking about, individual supercells, and those individual storms could form at any point during the afternoon and evening. And so I've had several people ask me for timing. Well, it's a little harder to time those out. We can give you a general window, but it's certainly no guarantee. So tomorrow we're talking about that threat for, again, those large, violent tornadoes, which means you folks that live in mobile homes probably should make plans to be with a friend or family that have a more sturdy structure. We have been so lucky to get through these last few tornado events that we've had without fatalities.
That's a very good point.
What happened on Friday night was a miracle to have that many significant tornadoes, EF2 or stronger, and you look at the damage, and whatever higher power you believe in, you thank him, because it's just a miracle that we did not have any fatalities, and that had the potential to be a devastating event coming through during the overnight. But again, we're talking about the biggest threat being from these tornadoes, these discrete supercells. So a very rare type setup for us here in the Midwest here in our part of the country.
It's a very good point. Again, I've adjusted the color a little bit so you can see the strong tornado risk a little bit better. But again, this area in red, so we're talking from essentially the Indy Metro up through Muncie, up to Lima, Findlay, Toledo, and even Sandusky and points west, all the way back to the Indiana-Illinois border. A strong tornado is possible. Now, again, we don't say this to scare you, right? This is what the Storm Prediction Center meteorologists have placed out. These guys put in a lot of hard work and a lot of time into getting these outlooks. And it is certainly something that I know that I would be under a lot of pressure trying to get this right. But it's also our job to prepare you. And so, again, if you live in this zone, especially tomorrow, we need you to kind of make sure that you know where that safe place is. How long is it going to take you to get there, right? If you're in a mobile home, make sure you have an alternative place to go. I know tomorrow's also a school day, right? So I know that's I'm sure schools will be reviewing their safety action plans tomorrow, especially in these areas. Now, if we go over to, John, another issue for tomorrow is that potential that we could see hail greater than 2 inches in diameter, especially from those supercells. And again, it's kind of the same area here, northern Indiana to a far northwestern Ohio and well into Michigan.
Yeah, this is going to be the type of hail that'll knock out the windows on your car pretty quickly. It's the type of hail that you get a notification from our app that a storm's approaching, and you've got a garage. I'd go ahead and get your vehicles, into a safer place, because that type of stuff is going to do significant damage as well. So that's what we talk about. We're talking about this all modes on the table type situation, is strong tornadoes, damaging winds, and very large hail. Thankfully, storms will be moving fast enough that I think the flooding threat remains very localized.
Yeah, and again, I see some other questions about timing in general. All right, the overall grand scheme of things, okay, because again, we have the potential for multiple rounds or multiple modes, as John said. I'm going to give it about noon to 2 a.m. It's a very wide window, I understand that, but as John said, with the potential of supercells during the early afternoon, followed by maybe a squall line or a QLCS potential a little bit later on, it's going to be super hard to kind of get narrowed down in specific timing. If we were dealing with just one round and one line, that's easier. But because we're looking at the potential of a wider type event, a more widespread type event, and the potential for multiple modes of storms, we'll give you the wide range, and perhaps if we get a little bit closer, and we can at least maybe give you a wider window between both rounds, we'll try to do that. But folks, again, preparedness is the key. I know it's a school day, I know it's a work day, and we just, you guys have got to be prepared. No matter where you live on
what's
this map.
so disheartening about tomorrow's potential, Nick, too, is that it's going to impact some of you folks that have already dealt with severe devastation. I see folks commenting from the Swayze area. All of you guys are under the gun again. So You need to think now about what you're going to do, especially if you're displaced from your home, as to where you're going to be.
It's a very good point. Again, it kind of goes back to right now, you got to know where that safe spot is. And obviously, if your home was damaged on Friday night, first of all, our thoughts are with you. But we also want you to make sure that you have a backup plan. All right, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a
And
neighbor. And
maybe we need to hit on this too. We often deal with damaging wind events.
mm-hmm.
I really want to stress that tomorrow, when you go under a warning, we want you to, don't just get indoors. We want you center room, lowest floor, a basement if you have one, um, and we need you to protect your head and neck. If you've got a helmet, a bicycle helmet or something, because we're talking about that potential for tornadoes, some of which could be significant. So we've got to get back to the basics on seeking shelter.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And real quick, not to be remiss, all right, we have a very wide level 3 out of 5 risk, right? That's this area in orange. Now, again, this is probably our 4th or 5th one of the year, so it's a very active start. But not to be remiss, we do have a level 2 out of 5 for Southeast Ohio and West Virginia and up into northwestern Pennsylvania. So overall, every single person in the Bell Park Weather Network coverage area is under a severe weather risk, whether you live in Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, or Pennsylvania. Wide area tomorrow, very broad. You saw when I had the map zoomed out, this enhanced risk, this level 3, goes way down even into the parts of the deep south potentially. So it's going to be a potentially busy day. Now let's kind of go into some model data because we want to kind of show you at least a little bit of the timing. And please, I stress with you that this is a model simulation. Okay, this is not intended to be any kind of guarantee or certainty on any one particular thing. So let's take you to 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon just to kind of start off with. Okay, and as you can see, thunderstorms are already developing across Indiana. Okay, and I know.
Notice how discreet those cells are.
Yes, there are
Every
certainly
one
some
of those
ones in
will
there.
have the potential to produce tornadoes.
Yeah, and so kind of what John's pointing out here is, again, now, I know this kind of looks like a bucket of spilled paint to some of you, right? I understand that. There are a couple spots in here, though. Just maybe a few discrete cells, and all it takes is a couple, folks, to really do some damage. We saw what happened on Friday with a squall line, okay, of embedded type. I don't want to call them spin-up tornadoes because they were significant, but embedded tornadoes in general. We could also see that again tomorrow in addition to these supercells. So the tornadoes could come from multiple modes. We could see supercell type tornadoes. We could also see those embedded tornadoes within a line. So got to really make sure that you know what your plan is for tomorrow. Being about 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow, we're starting to see some activity developing potentially across Indiana. Again, this is a simulation. Okay, this is not intended to be, this is not, the gospel, if you will, as to what everything is going to look like down to the exact street level. I get that question a lot. Like, I see this simulation, I'm taking this as, the final thing. You can't do that. Okay, this is just an overall grand scheme look at things as to what could happen. Okay, so just keep in mind, this could be an hour later, could be an hour earlier. Again, we just have to kind of watch and see how things develop tomorrow. The other big thing tomorrow is if we can get some sunshine, that's going to really help boost our severe weather chances as well. And it's not out of the question that our severe risk maybe goes up a little bit, right, to that level 4 risk by the time we get to tomorrow. So some questions there. Now, by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, we're kind of looking at the I-75 corridor potentially. But again, this is just one potential, okay? Look what's developing back across Indiana by 3 o'clock. That's our cold front right here. Okay, so we could see another round of thunderstorms developing. Some of those could be on the strong to severe side, so we've got to be ready for that too. Okay, so again, one round potentially on in advance of the cold front that could contain some supercells, could also contain a few line segments and a few embedded type tornadoes in that as well. And then we have a second round right back behind it just a couple hours later. So not necessarily the exact same as Friday, and that's the other key. We've also gotten a lot of questions. Is this going to be the exact same as Friday? Answer to that one this time around is going to be a no, just because we have the potential for multiple rounds and multiple modes. Friday, yes, we did have the one supercell in southern Indiana. That was a killer tornado down in Sullivan. That was way out ahead of the line. before the line absorbed it. And then we saw several embedded tornadoes from central Indiana into northern and western Ohio. But this is going to be a threat where maybe that first round is all supercells, and then a few hours later that second line kind of comes through. And it may not just be one supercell tomorrow. It could be multiple. So we got to make sure we're kind of keeping an eye on that as well. Let's take you to 5 o'clock. I'll move the map a little further here. And again, I stress, we're still looking at the potential. We could be covering severe weather across multiple
I was
areas
going to say,
at one
once
time.
we go live tomorrow, Nick, we could be on the air for hours.
Could very well be. Absolutely. And again, that's not intended to scare you guys at home. It's just letting you know that this is a very wide-reaching threat. Okay, if this model were correct at 5 o'clock tomorrow, there could be a round of strong to potentially severe storms in northeast Ohio and another round in Indiana. So it's going to be one of those days we may have to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit between storms. We've done that before. We're used to that. All right, but I also want you to kind of watch down here in southern Indiana towards 5 o'clock, some more semi-discrete cells, maybe just ahead of that line. That's concerning too.
Well, that line is very broken too, if that's correct, by any stretch.
Absolutely. And with it being broken, again, we kind of saw what happened the other night, especially for those of you in Wapakoneta. That whole squall line kind of started splitting, and in that split is where we had that 17-mile-long EF1 tornado that caused a lot of damage here in Allglaze County. The greenhouse was completely flattened. A truck stop was completely devastated as well, and several other businesses and homes were damaged. But again, we can't really be so specific on, okay, if this is the way it's going to look, where are the tornadoes going to be? I've also gotten a lot of questions. Is my house going to see a tornado? We really have never been able to exactly perfect, okay, a tornado's here at this time, and it's going to be here, 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 and here. We can't do that. This is a model simulation. Okay, the model simulation does not tell us where there are tornadoes on the ground or where there could be at any one given point. Obviously, you can kind of pick out a couple things like back here. On this, you can see a little bit backwards C shape here in northeast Ohio. So maybe that first round becomes more of a bow echo as it works into northeast Ohio, but we can't be so sure. We just got to watch and see how things unfold. So that's 5 o'clock. Let's take you to 7 o'clock. We're kind of going every 2 hours here. Okay, so by 7 o'clock, round one, really beginning to exit our area. Round two at this point has pretty much cleared Indiana for the most part. It is kind of up and down the US 23 corridor, and I caution you again here, even in central Ohio, again, model simulation, if this were correct, you can see a pretty nice looking line segment and maybe a couple discrete cells still out there from time to time. So again, the mode tomorrow, we're going to call it mixed. We have supercells, line segments, lines as a whole. Could be one of those things where we just have all the modes going on at one time. So we'll have to kind of watch and see how this pans out. Now, the later we get into the evening hours, very similar to Friday, we do expect a transition to more of a damaging wind threat. But keep in mind, just as we saw on Friday, embedded tornadoes will remain a possibility. You saw that 5% tornado risk went way out here to the east. Okay, so we still want you to be prepared no matter if maybe your area has a higher wind threat than a tornado threat. And we'll talk about the wind threat too. I forgot to show that probability because that's pretty much everybody's on a 30% level 3 for wind. But again, just something to kind of keep in mind. So that's 7 o'clock.
Hey, Nick,
yeah.
I'm just looking at some of the questions and comments. Somebody's saying, I heard there were going to be storms today. Now they're saying tomorrow. Well, here's what happened. And this is why you need to make sure you're seeing our most recent post. The storm system slowed down drastically. Yes, initially we were thinking severe weather would begin tonight and go into Wednesday. Cold front slows down. The upper level dynamic slows down. That affects the timing. That is why the greater threat now comes on Wednesday. And because of that, though, we're going to have this event during the day, more instability with the dynamics kicking in. That is the reason our severe threat is probably significantly higher. Now, another thing is the helmet. I see a comment on, yes, for tomorrow, being that we have the tornado threat as high as it is, yes, I am saying you need to have a bicycle helmet. Maybe you got football helmets, softball, any kind of thing that can protect your head, yes. And what we find out, in these events that have a lot of fatalities is these trauma surgeons, tell us that if people could have just only protected their head and neck to help prevent some of that head trauma, a lot of these folks would have survived being struck by flying debris. And that's how a lot of fatalities occur. The vast majority of them is people get hit with flying debris. It's not being lofted into the tornado or anything like that. It's just the stuff that's flying around. That, you're talking EF3, EF2.
Mm-hmm.
110, 130 miles an hour. That stuff's flying around. So that's the reason for the helmet. So I wanted to address that. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Real quick, too, those of you that have the Bell Park Weather Network app, you're likely getting alerted to a wind advisory for tomorrow. I really have not
They
highlighted this
just
risk.
extended it all the way down to Indianapolis and all that too. It was a big
Yeah.
expansion.
Yeah, so those of you that may have just gotten an alert on your phone that there's a wind advisory, I'm going to back this up a little bit just to kind of go over one thing. Okay, so even at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and again, I apologize for backtracking, but if you're way out ahead of these storms, you're going to have gusty winds tomorrow, maybe 40, 45, 50 miles per hour. So that's why the wind advisories have been kind of hoisted, and it looks to be so far across Indiana and western Ohio. We'll see if that gets extended further east with time, but just something to kind of keep in mind tomorrow that if it's not raining, it's likely going to be quite windy for us. So just kind of keep that in mind. So let's take you back to 9 o'clock. And again, now, if this model is correct, by 9 o'clock, you can see we have transitioned to pretty much a linear event from north to south as we are working east of I-71. Maybe a couple bowing structures potentially out here as well. 60 to 70 mile per hour winds, not out of the question. We'll take you towards 10 and 11 o'clock. And again, now you're kind of starting to see why we're telling you this broad noon to 2 a.m. type window. Again, we're going very broad here from way in the west across Indiana all the way across into northwestern PA. John, did you have something else?
No, Nick.
Oh,
no,
okay. I'm sorry. I thought I heard you. My bad.
I'm working on these alerts here.
Yeah. So by 11 o'clock, as you can see, Middle Ohio Valley starts to get in on round 2 potentially, and northwestern PA as well. Again, I don't want to be so specific with timing, but this is why it's so broad, because we have multiple rounds. It's going to be really hard to time out each round, time out each type of storm mode, and that kind of thing. So I just want you to be prepared from noon to 2. So noon to 2 a.m. that is. So we'll take you towards 1 a.m. on Thursday, and by that time, as I kind of step out of view, you can see our immediate area for the most part is just showers, maybe a rumble of thunder left over as maybe that last line kind of moves through parts of southwestern PA into the central parts of PA. So that's a look at the modeled side of things. I do want to show one other graphic real quick as well. Okay, we want you to be ready for severe weather. So I need to change that on my other view over here. Let me see if I've got that up. Yep, oh, I need to change the image real quick. So, but real quick, we want you to be ready for the risk of severe weather tomorrow, regardless of what you may end up experiencing at your particular location. So, again, we want you to be ready for severe weather tomorrow, and that means, number one, if you have a weather radio, make sure that it is plugged in, it is programmed, and it is ready to go. That is your absolute best source. You have a 90 decibel siren that's going to sound in your house. I guarantee it will wake you up, but you've got to have that ready to go. Okay, if you don't have one, you can go to your local hardware store, you can go to Walmart. If you are fortunate enough to maybe see it on Amazon for same-day delivery potentially, I know sometimes they offer those kind of things. You may want to take a look on there. But even like your big box stores, Walmart, Meijer, most of those have weather radios as well. Okay, secondly, our Bell Park Weather Network app. This is free to download on your Apple and Google Play stores. If you haven't already downloaded it, please do so. There's also some exciting updates coming down the line, so I won't share too much about that, but you got to have this. Okay, this will also let you track the storms down to your house. There's storm tracks on there. It will give you a city list minute by minute as to where it's going, what the radar attributes are saying could happen. You can look at all the alerts. You can look at our forecast. There's just a plethora of things. That includes, you also get custom notifications for when we go live, especially over on our YouTube platform. We are really trying to push this because we know that Facebook Live sometimes tends to cut our numbers back a little bit, so we want you to have multiple ways to watch us. just in the event that something happens in your particular location. So 3 things. This is kind of your homework assignment for today, okay? If you have a weather radio, make sure it's ready to go. If you don't, I know we just did our giveaway, and I know this is obviously very good timing with severe weather coming, but if you have a weather radio, make sure it's ready to go. You can program it by county. There's also there's even some really super fancy ones that you can actually program by alert type. I won't spend a whole lot of time on that, but you can do your research. Midland is the best brand in our opinion. They're not a sponsor, but they are probably the best brand out there. Again, second thing we want you to do, make sure you have our app downloaded. We've heard a lot of great things from everybody so far. Again, you can watch our live streams in the app. We do send out push notifications to you. Even if it's not in your area at the particular time, we still encourage that you watch because you never know what's going to end up happening. And then again, make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube. Do you do those 3 things for us, and you will be golden, in addition to knowing where your safe spot is and having that severe weather action plan ready to go. So I guess 5 things, 5 simple things is your homework assignment for tonight. Obviously the weather radio may not apply to everybody, but if you don't have a weather radio, make sure you have your wireless emergency alerts turned on. That is a setting in your phone. If you're not sure how to get to it, you can simply Google or YouTube it. Very easy to set up and make sure those are turned on. If your Amber alerts are turned on, you're more than likely also already have your wireless emergency alerts turned on, but we still want you to make sure those are turned on. I leave mine on no matter what, and if that means that something goes off at 2 in the morning when I'm asleep, then so be it. All kinds of different things come out of that. So again, 5 things for us, okay? Weather radio, app, YouTube, safe spot, action plan. Sound good? It sounds good to me. So, John, do you have anything else for us before we kind of wrap up here early this afternoon?
Yeah, I just want to stress that tomorrow, we're not trying to scare anyone. Here's the thing. You get the warning. You do what you need to do. You seek shelter in the right way. Do it quickly, and you'll come out of this just fine.
Absolutely.
We'll all come out of this just fine. But we need you to take tomorrow seriously. We don't use this kind of wording very often, but tomorrow has that potential to be a very dangerous day.
It does.
Especially for what we typically experience. So get the warning, take action. The wonderful thing about watching us on the phone is you can take us into your safe place. So make sure your devices are charged up. Maybe go get you a couple of battery banks if you don't have them. They're fairly affordable. So, combined with the wind advisory and the potential for severe weather, I could see power outages becoming an issue. So that way you got the ability to keep your devices charged and watch us if your power goes out. So that's just my thoughts. Again, we're going to continue to update things as new data comes in. We won't get another SPC outlook until about 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, about 2 o'clock in the morning. So, but we'll be sure to get that updated. One last thing, real quick, on the mobile app. If you have an iPad, an Android tablet, you can actually download the app on there as well. And I've also even heard that if you have certain types of Chromebooks, that it's available on there too. So we're actually kind of learning some things with this that we actually didn't know were going to be available beforehand. So that's kind of neat. But again, phone and your tablet, those are your biggies. So with that, guys, we won't keep you too much longer. Again, just be prepared. We're not here to scare you. We just know that this potential exists. And if the worst thing we do is we talk about this and you get prepared and it ends up not coming to fruition, at least you know that you were prepared just in case. That's all we are here to do, is make sure that you're prepared. We're not here to scare you.
That's the thing. Severe weather doesn't affect every single person. But, man, as you saw Friday night, it definitely can affect your neighbor. So just be considerate. If you don't get hit, man, you're lucky. Be thankful. But there's a high likelihood that, quite a few folks are going to be impacted by severe weather tomorrow. Keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers.
Absolutely. And real quick, just before we kind of wind things up, I know there's some comments real quick about some storms going on now. Again, southern Ohio here. Okay, we're seeing a few rumbles of thunder and some heavier rain showers out there this afternoon. Anything for the rest of today and even into tonight should be relatively scattered. That complex way back up here towards Chicago should bypass most, if not the entire Bell Park weather network coverage area. If you're in South Bend, maybe might see a quick passing thunder shower there potentially, but other than that, guys, for the rest of the day, it's not looking too bad. A little bit on the warmer side. Unless you live up here in Toledo, you've got an interesting lake breeze today coming off of Lake Erie, kind of helping you stay a little bit on the cooler side. But of course, we'll be here keeping you up to date through the rest of the day, tonight, tomorrow, and as needed here on our Facebook platform, YouTube, and of course, make sure you have our mobile app as well. For forecaster John Tinney, I'm Nick Dunn reporting. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you back here next time.